When Eli Woolery and Aaron Walter launched the Design Better podcast, they did it on behalf of InVision, a tech platform used by designers and other creatives. Aaron was the head of content at the company, and the goal of the podcast was to educate the designer community while also raising awareness of the InVision brand. But when InVision decided to wind down its content operations, Eli and Aaron negotiated to take over Design Better, and now it's a thriving standalone business. In a recent interview, Eli talked through everything from the evolving format of the show to how it became an independent media business to its current monetization models. Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're a longtime fan of this show, you're probably aware that it's not monetized with ads. I'm entirely reliant on paid subscriptions to my Substack newsletter to fund this content. Subscribers get access to a deep archive of interviews with the world's most successful media entrepreneurs. They also get to book a half-hour introductory Zoom call with me. Go to simonowens.substack.com. That's simonowens.substack.com. Or just Google the words Simon Owens and newsletter. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey Eli, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
So we're here to talk about this amazing podcast that you co-host and co-own. Before we get into that, so the podcast is based on design, specifically product design. I think mainly just product design and stuff like that. You and your co-host have a very deep background in design. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, what's kind of your background, and obviously your co-host isn't here, but talk a little bit about
Sure.
what he kind of brings to the design kind of field.
Yeah. We both kind of have a pretty deep background both in design and education. So I started my career in physical product design. I worked on kind of weird products, underwater video cameras, bike lights, that kind of things, but actually designing and engineering physical products. And then I kind of transitioned over the years. Well, I started in magazines. I did some magazine design for a while. I got into underwater photography, and then that was a very fun but not much of a money-making project. So once we started having kids, I had to switch to something where I actually had more of an income.
Like people were hiring you to film things underwater?
Well, so not so much that, but I was running a magazine where we would like travel around the world. We would take photographs. We would have submissions. So we wanted to make sort of a National Geographic like quality magazine, but which was more about the photography than like the articles. The articles were pretty short. So I had run that for a while, and then kind of got into more software design, got into the startup world a bit, started working for startups, and around that time, kind of 2011, 12-ish, I started teaching in the product design program where I trained at Stanford. So I've been helping to teach the capstone class there for the last 12 years. My background is, originally in product design and physical product design. I did some other kind of creative stuff along the way, photography, magazine design, then digital design. So kind of touched a lot of different design fields. My co-host Aaron, his original background was in fine art and painting, but he became a designer early in his career and ended up running the MailChimp design team from when it was very small to, quite large. So he had some real experience like scaling a design team in a fast-moving company.
Because MailChimp is like one of the biggest success stories in terms of it was mainly bootstrapped for years, right? Like in terms of like just like a completely bootstrapped company that had like a huge exit.
Totally. They didn't really take any outside investors. So the founders, they did pretty well in the end there. But Aaron left MailChimp, went to a company called InVision, and he hired me as a first member of this team called Design Education. And that's where we started the podcast about 8 years ago, kind of under the auspices of this company, which was a software design tool company, which folks may remember. But they, along with all their competitors, got crushed by Figma, who just recently IPO'd. And we ended up spinning out the podcast before the company totally sank and became an independent show about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. That was a big learning experience. I could talk more about that, but going from being sort of employed by a company and having a fully funded show essentially to trying to, make it into a business that could support two people.
So InVision, you said it was like tools that software design, or what kind of designer would use it?
Yeah, software design tools. So if you can think of like the early days of software prototyping, you would, this is rewinding a lot, but maybe you design the screen in Photoshop, but you wanted to make a clickable prototype. So you would use InVision to make that prototype and share it with people. And then, it did more advanced stuff over time, but it eventually got to the point where Figma, which is this design tool, which allowed people to collaborate real time online, kind of like in a Google Doc, became the way that people expected software design tools to work, and all the other tools tried to play catch up to that, but just didn't make it happen in time. And Figma won that battle.
And so it sounds like Aarron, he wasn't hired to work on the tool itself. He was hired to work on what sounds like the marketing side of like you needed to appeal to software designers. So like the idea, it was basically content marketing where you would create like really good content that software designers or any kind of designer would want to consume that content, and through kind of osmosis and branding, maybe they would be more likely to use Figma over some other tool.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this was, I think, both Aarron and my first role. Well, Aarron had transitioned from more individual contributor to leader manager at MailChimp. I had spent most of my career as an individual contributor or, sort of creative entrepreneur. And so this was my first role on more of a marketing team. And so, yeah, exactly. We built this team out to create content that not only appealed to individual designers, but organizations that were trying to like figure out, what does design mean? Like, why is Apple doing so well? Why is Google, that has now, embraced design more? This is still kind of early days of Google embracing design, but why do they do that? Why are they investing so much money in it? Why are we, or maybe like a bank or a financial institution, why are we lagging so far behind here? And we could kind of speak to that, like the power of investing in design. And just so happened that this tool, InVision, is a great tool to use if you want to kind of spread, the positive effects of design through your organization.
And was it exist on like InVision.com/blog, or did you like create like a dedicated publication? Like what was the
We were kind of a dedicated site, and there's pros and cons to this, but what they wanted to do was sort of like create something independent. So it's called Design Better, which is still our name. And, and the subheading was by InVision. So it was a pretty independent kind of media entity of sorts. We did books, we did a podcast, we did some other things. It got a lot of attention. People came to really kind of trust and love what we did. I think the downside of it was that people didn't always understand the connection to InVision because the brands weren't necessarily like super well tied together. But it ended up working well for us because we were able to pull out the show, keep the same name, and it was a brand that people already kind of knew.
Yeah, I see like brands doing, like I always think it's great when brands try to create content that's like actually useful and isn't just sales copy. But sometimes they go so far in the other direction of like keeping it separate that you're like, I don't even understand the ROI value here anymore because it's almost too separated. Like another example was Dollar Shave Club. I don't know if they launched or they funded Mel Magazine, which was like this men's magazine that was like really well respected, but the publication eventually closed because like it didn't make any money, and like you only even knew that it was related to Dollar Shave Club if you like looked on the about page or if you were like a media geek like me. And so I wonder how much was it the same thing, is like they did almost a too good of a job of focusing on the useful content versus like thinking about how is this actually helping market the product. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it was always trying to strike a balance. I mean, we did, I guess it was an example. We wrote these books and we would refer back to InVision as a tool where it was appropriate. The book wasn't about pitching a particular InVision product, but we would insert it in there, where it made sense. I think there probably could have been better ways to tie the two together. And Aarron came from this background at MailChimp where they did a lot of that investment in things that like maybe didn't have an internal ROI that was, or an immediate ROI.
Yeah, MailChimp launched its own streaming platform or something, right?
Yeah, they did a lot of kind of crazy cool things. And I think it ended up working out for them in the long term. And you might make the argument now that it's owned by Intuit and some of that spirit is gone. Who knows how that'll affect their overall, success. But I think there's an argument to be made for doing that kind of thing, but it is hard to, tie it to ROI in a kind of immediate fashion.
So you launched the Design Better podcast. How long into your tenure did you launch that?
Yeah, that was pretty fast. So we, one of the projects that we started with were the books, and then I would say within after we kind of wrote and co-wrote 2 or 3 books together, and then we're preparing the podcast around that time. So it launched pretty soon after we started that team.
Yeah, and so was it similar to the format today of you and Aaron are co-hosts and you're bringing on some third person who's like somebody well respected within the design community and interviewing them?
Yeah, exactly. That was definitely the core of the show, and I think what's changed over the years, and I think it's probably evident if you look through our catalog, is in the early days we very much focused on product design and tech, and it's like a lot of people that were well known in that sphere, but maybe not well known outside that sphere. But we came to a certain point, 2 or maybe even 3 years in, where we just realized we're talking to a lot of the same kinds of people. We're hearing a lot of the same stories. We as hosts might be getting a little bit bored of it, which is probably a good indication that our audience is like maybe itching for something new. So we started to expand out to more general creativity, creative process. Our audience is still largely designers in tech and that kind of thing, but what can we pull from other creative disciplines? So let's talk to we had an opportunity to talk to John Cleese from Monty Python, or an author like David Sedaris, or a fashion entrepreneur like Eileen Fisher. What do the people from these very different industries have to teach us as designers who work in a certain field? And that ended up being a pretty successful formula because, there's personal, there's often interest in like, oh, this person is just kind of a interesting popular culture figure. But they also approach creativity in a unique way, and we can kind of highlight that in the show. And so that's kind of where we are now. And what we continue to strive for is just find interesting people in all different kinds of disciplines. And we still have kind of core guests who can talk about a very specific thing related to product design, like design systems. But we often kind of explore the edges of creativity now.
And while you were still at InVision, how quickly did how popular did the podcast get back then?
So it took time. I think that was a pretty big revelation in some ways, that we had a pretty big marketing budget. There was already a blog and email list with millions of subscribers on it. But even with all that sort of built-in attention, it took a while before the podcast to get traction. And, back then, and even still now, it's sort of hard to track, like, listenership and where are people coming from and how much are they engaging. You get some of that through, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, et cetera. But, back then there were even fewer tools available. So it was somewhat hard to measure. When we started to see things like, Vanity Fair wrote a little thing about us, or Architectural Digest, we started to realize that, okay, we're kind of getting out there into the world more, but it definitely took time. And I think, I would think some people even then, back in, let's see, what was this, 2017 when we started, would think like, maybe you're a little late to the podcast game, because it'd been around for 10 years at that point or more. And now maybe you could say that even more, but I think what we've kind of learned and practiced is just consistently putting out what we think is good content. That's the way to survive. And you can't, you have to have some sort of runway if you're just getting started, because you're not going to make money on a podcast immediately unless you're a celebrity, in which case it's maybe a bit easier. But even then, you still have to do it consistently to make it into a business.
So it was just like kind of slow linear growth.
Yeah, at first. And I think, we experimented with different ways to grow the show. I think at one point even tried paid advertising, maybe, things like that. But really the only, core way to do it was just, putting out a show. When we started the show, it was every 2 weeks. Now we're weekly, but every 2 weeks, put out a new show. And, just hope that it's good enough that people talk about it or share it with their friends or coworkers.
So talk me through the kind of exit from InVision and how you decided and what went into the process of kind of divorcing the podcast from the brand and taking it with you.
Yeah, so I mean, a big shout out to our former colleagues at InVision. There's a lot of folks that we, are still friends with there, and the leadership team there was very accommodating with us, and we were able to, find a kind of mutually beneficial way to spin out the show and the content, and what was InVision, or what was remaining of InVision, eventually got wrapped into or acquired by this product called Miro, and which we still have a relationship with. So, it ended up working out for everybody. Honestly, a show like Design Better, there's the name, but it's really the hosts that carry the spirit of the show. So Aaron and I, we could have said, okay, well, this show's wrapping up, we'll go start something else. And, we would have had some legwork to kind of like build back up our RSS feed and audience and things like that. But we could have done it. It might have taken a little more time. So there wasn't a lot of intrinsic value in that particular brand, probably to anybody else. But to us, it was valuable. I think they understood that. And so, yeah, we were able to negotiate a way to acquire that, along with the books that we have, which we've been publishing and redesigning and republishing, and a few other things like a documentary. So, overall, it was a pretty smooth process. Took a little longer for things like the books than we'd hoped, like a couple years to kind of get all that stuff wrapped up. But yeah, overall, it was good.
And what was your motivation for doing it? Like, were you and Aaron being like, okay, now that we're spinning it off, that we can make it a business that isn't, it isn't a marketing vehicle anymore. Like, let's turn this into a business of some sort.
That was the hope, because Aaron, we both really like the show. We saw the potential to grow it. We saw, these platforms that were still somewhat new at the time, like Substack, that it could be an outlet for us to grow the show. So, we kind of put our heads together, made some projections. And we knew that for the first year, it would really be just about kind of learning the business. And so we didn't count on having much income that first year. And sure enough, we didn't have much income that first year, but we were able to like build partnerships and kind of structure the show. We hired some consulting help to just like set us up, because we were very new to the industry. So after that first year, things really started to take off, and Substack has been great too, and I can talk about that. But yeah, we both, we really love working together. I mean, we complement each other's skills. Aaron's experience leading and scaling a design team are really helpful to the leadership portion of our audience, and I just love working with him. So we wanted to preserve that, keep that going, and we've just become really close partners over the years.
And what did you take with you exactly? So you took the RSS feed of the podcast. It sounds like you took the copyright to the books, including the ones already published. Mm-hmm. And then did you take some emails with like a newsletter list or anything like that?
Yeah. So so there was the sort of main InVision list, which was millions of subscribers, which we did not take. There was a smaller list along the order of 100,000 people that was part of Design Better, which we did take with us. And when we moved to Substack, we pulled that list over, and there was some attrition. I think from the 100,000 we pulled in, like 40,000 ended up having to be, we're pretty inactive essentially, so we had to trim those. But now we're back up to I think we're over 140,000 now. And I think Substack's, ecosystem, I'm sure there's some amount of like bots and all that happens on all the platforms. But, I feel like there's a lot of real organic growth happening too. And things like recommendations have been really great engines for, helping us grow our audience, and we try to help other folks grow their audience too. So yeah, it's been a great platform for us.
So you leave the company what year approximately?
We left. Aaron had left a while prior during COVID to work on a different project. I stayed there, and for the next year and a half, and then it was clear that like things were wrapping up. I consulted there for a little while, but by January 2023, we had essentially pulled the show out and become independent.
So what was did you move the hosting to Substack right away, or
pretty soon we did move the hosting, we did right away, and then we didn't immediately put our paid platform there. In fact, I don't think at first we even kind of started with the paid platform, but then we looked at ways to create a paid platform. Got some advice that I frankly think wasn't great, to try a different platform other than Substack for the paid portion of the site. It didn't work. As you might imagine, it's very confusing for folks to be on Substack and then try to pay on a different platform to get a premium show. So we moved the paid membership over to Substack, and that worked a lot better.
Yeah, so I've never moved my RSS feed, but the way I understand it happens is you basically somehow point the RSS feed at the new RSS feed, which was hosted on Substack, and that somehow Apple and all the other podcast apps that drift off of Apple's ecosystem know to then go start pulling from that other RSS feed. That's kind of like a high level version of what happens, right?
Yeah, that's basically right. I mean, you can go essentially into the individual platform settings and tell them where the new feed is, and then there's some added complexity because we also have feeds for our premium subscribers, which include like ad-free shows and longer episodes, that kind of thing. So you have to set those up too.
So you didn't launch paid subscriptions right away, correct?
We didn't, no.
Yeah. So I think to start with, and this is still, at least based on the last time I spoke to you, your biggest revenue source was advertising. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep. Yeah. Still is. I mean, so advertising in the larger sense of both like the mid-roll, pre-roll type advertising, which is a pretty small portion of it, and then larger partnerships where we will go and do, let's say, a live show somewhere, and we'll package that together with some other things like a feature in our newsletter. So that's still driving a lot of it. The paid memberships is smaller but growing, and we're actually just about to release, and I could probably talk about it given that I'm sure the show won't come out for the next week or so. Is that right?
It'll probably be, it might be sometime late next week.
Okay. Yeah, so this should be live by then, but we're launching a toolkit, which is essentially a bundle of software and course discounts. Other shows have done this. You may have seen it on like Lenny's show. He has a bundle of things. So we're essentially kind of gathering some pretty attractive discounts. It's like over, gosh, I can't remember offhand, but over $1,400 worth of discounts on these platforms that are, you can't really get immediately otherwise. And then if you're an annual subscriber, you'll get access to that. So I've been in the midst of like banging my head against Zapier, the wall with working with Zapier and like Claude and ChatGPT to try to get our system working. But hopefully that'll get set up in the next few days, and we will launch that early next week.
And then, so for the advertising, did you go and immediately try to find like an advertising network, or are you guys both like blocking and tackling and going out and finding your own sponsors and nailing those deals down?
Yeah. So at first we tried to do it on our own, and pretty quickly realized that like for the larger partnerships, that makes sense. For the kind of standard mid-roll, pre-roll stuff, it doesn't make sense for us to invest our time there. So we started working with an agency for that stuff. That's going okay. I think, we're trying to figure out how to make that even more worthwhile, given that we still have to do ad raids and things like that. So we're not getting a ton of revenue from that, but as you might imagine, it's very, it's dependent on the size of your audience. So assuming we continue to grow the show, it'll become more valuable. But right now it's still, the more kind of bespoke partnerships where we get the most revenue.
And what kind of advertisers are you attracting?
All kinds. I mean, you can go to our site and go to there is a sponsors page. Trying to think. So Aarron kind of, that's part of it. Aarron's bailiwick is doing the host read ads and things like that. So we have like Masterclass, Air Doctor, AquaTrue, some of the products that we actually use. They send us samples, things like that. But over the years,
those so I know what Masterclass is, but like, are the other ones, are they like design, like B2B, like trying services that are sell to designers or something like that? Or?
Not necessarily. So, I mean, sometimes we do end up with that. These are just more general consumer products, like a water filter. They're pretty well designed products, but there's no like specific design angle on them.
Interesting. And so, like, I think you said that you get like 100,000 downloads a month. Like, I guess my perception was like some of those consumer products, like they're lower CPM, so you would only go after those if like you were like a huge podcast versus what like you guys could get way higher CPMs if you went after specifically like companies that were trying to appeal to designers. What's your kind of thinking there? Am I off base?
No, that's pretty accurate. I think, so we have this agency that sort of bundles us up with other shows, so it ends up being kind of more general interest things, and those use inventory that we're not using currently for the most part. So sometimes we'll book inventory which is part of a larger partnership, and is more meaningful revenue. But if there's other ad slots that are available, we'll just go ahead and book those with the agency, which is fine. Again, like over time, we'd like to make that more worthwhile too, but for right now it's fine.
So the more bespoke deals that you're doing individually, those are more with the kind of higher paying like design type
yes,
companies and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you briefly experimented with another platform for paid subscriptions, and then when did you turn paid subscriptions on for Substack?
It was about spring of last year we started doing that.
And so how did you design your subscription offering? Like, I know you said you have an ad-free version. Did you create any other extra perks and stuff like that?
Yeah, we did. So at first it was pretty much the ad-free and then extra episodes. So we went from releasing 2 shows a month essentially to 4 shows a month. So everybody still got the 2 free shows, but we added these 2 additional shows, which you just got a preview of if you weren't a premium subscriber. And then over time, we started to add other things. So we do a monthly AMA with a industry expert or well-known creative person, which everybody who's a premium member can come to that. We have the books, which I mentioned. We have a newsletter called The Brief, which is monthly, which we kind of compile insights from the show. Something we've been doing that's more recent is it's called Experts in Residence. So we have a cohort of folks who have expertise outside Aarron and my expertise. So folks that are like a behavioral design expert, expert in the business of design, that type of thing. And they come in and we'll do like a guest issue of The Brief. They'll do an AMA, that type of thing. So that's been another benefit for folks. So yeah, we're always experimenting. We've got this toolkit that's in the works. I think, as you might imagine, people are at this point like pretty averse to subscribing to something new if they don't really need it. They've already got Netflix and a dozen other things. So we want to make it kind of a no-brainer. Like, oh, this is so valuable. Why should I not? I'm already, I get the education. There's some entertainment value. I get to connect with the community. So yeah, it's just constantly try to make it valuable so that at least, we still want it to be a lot of stuff is free. We always will give, if you're in school or if you're between jobs, we'll give you a scholarship. So we want to make it available to everybody, but we're a business, we have to make money. So we also want to make it valuable enough that some portion of our audience is willing to pay for it.
How much do you charge?
So we are about, for yearly, it's $72 a year or $7 a month.
And then, so you said that you do a preview. I think so Substack has this thing where you could launch a paid podcast or have a paid podcast where you have to be a paid subscriber, but you can like demarcate like a certain percentage of that goes out on the free RSS feed.
Right.
And there's something at the end maybe that says if you want to listen to the rest of this episode, you have to become a paid subscriber.
Yeah, exactly. So
is that a custom message that you're recording that it's inserting, or is that something that's how does Substack?
It's custom. Yeah. So what we do is essentially create 3 versions of the show. Thankfully, we have an editor who helps us with this. So there's the premium version, which has no ads and runs on Substack or on the private feeds in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Then we have a preview, which lives in Substack, which has some ads in it, which are hard coded or hard inserted into it. And then we have a dynamic version, which goes out through Megaphone, which is Spotify's platform, and that syndicates it to all the platforms. That's the free version of the show that goes out to everybody, and that has dynamic ad insertion. And so,
so Substack isn't the host for the free version; it's Megaphone.
it's not. Yeah, Megaphone is. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then so you, as another paid perk is you bring on an expert, and you said you do an Ask Me Anything.
Mm-hmm.
How's that facilitated? Is that just in the comments section of a Substack post?
So we'd love to be able to move it over to Substack. Right now, it's tricky because they do video, but at least until I last checked, it's just like, 2 people on video. It's not like multi-person. And so right now we host that on, it's one of these casts. We're on Squadcast right now, so it's not that. Something cast. I'm blanking on it, but it's essentially like a live webinar platform. So the hosts, Aaron and I, and the guests are live on video there. And then there's a chat room essentially where everybody gets invited in and can ask questions, and they can vote on questions, that kind of thing. So it's interactive. So Substack's not there yet and you can kind of approximate that, but it seems like with only 2 people right now, would love for them to invest further in that, because then we can move off this other platform, which is pretty expensive.
And you don't really, if I was looking at your YouTube channel, it's just like a still image with an audio file. Do you do much in video other than the live stuff?
We're trying to get more into that. We're going back and republishing some of our more popular episodes, which we have video for as video shows. And we'd like to do more. It's mostly just like a cost thing and just having the time, given everything else we're doing. As you might imagine, the YouTube algorithm punishes you pretty heavily if you're audio only. So that you really want to have video content on there. It's just more like, where are we focusing our energy and our resources? I think we will over time do more of that, but right now we're mostly in the audio game.
And then for the books, are you still publishing new books, or you're just utilizing the archives of the stuff that you had already written?
It's mostly archives. We're looking at doing some new ones. We've just been doing some analysis on kind of like return on investment on what it costs to produce a book and release it on our site. And I think if we could find the right kind of package of authors to do it with, it would make sense, but it's not an immediate thing.
And so are the books only available for purchase, or do you make like ebook versions available for paid subscribers?
So they're all available for free for paid subscribers. They're all digital only for the moment. Yeah.
Oh, so you don't sell a print version of it?
No, we don't sell print. Yeah.
And I think you referenced earlier that you do some kind of live shows. Like, are these like in-person shows?
Yeah, we do live shows. So some of those are sponsored. So we've been doing some shows with user testing. Some of them are like we did one last year with the Savannah College of Art and Design, which is kind of like a panel show. We're going to be doing one in New York with another panel in September. So, we either find a really compelling guest that makes it justify the cost to do it live on our own, or we have a sponsor and do some sponsored type content.
And is that usually like you're booking the venue, you're selling the tickets, all that kind of stuff?
No, so usually we have a partner. So with user testing, we'd be part of one of their conferences. With SCAD, it was their student faculty audience. So they kind of take care of the booking. We show up with our recording equipment and make the show happen.
And the people in the audience are mostly your fans, or they're like people who are affiliated with the sponsor in some way?
It's a bit of both. So with user testing, it's largely folks there for their conference. SCAD had students and folks that knew about the show. We did one in New York again last year. That was more like a fan show. It's kind of a mix.
And how are you staffed currently?
Really just me and Aaron. But we do have an editor and kind of engineer named Brian Paik, who is working with us. It's not exclusive. He's got other shows he's working on, but we've been using him for a long time. He's fantastic. And then occasionally other contractors, like when we redesign the books, we hire a contractor for that. But it's really Aaron and I full time, and then kind of contract help.
And how does this fit into your career? Like, is this kind of the main gig? This is the main like full-time job that you're doing, or is this in like a mix of like others, a lot of other things?
It's the main thing apart from teaching right now. So I teach half the year at Stanford, and that's mostly January through June. I run a lecture series that starts in the falls, but yeah. So I would say it's like when teaching is happening, it's like 80-20. But for most of the year, it's mostly podcast.
And what are kind of the ambitions for the show? When you look like 3 to 5 years down the road, is it mainly just like kind of still a small affair, just you and Aaron? Are there any ideas of like how do we create a more kind of multimedia or multifaceted media company out of this? What are your ambitions there?
Yeah, I don't think we have any ambitions to get huge. We have been talking about does it make sense to create more of a network? In fact, we have one other show currently part of that's Aaron. It's a great show. It's a smaller show called Reconsidering that Aaron and our friend Meredith Black and Bob Baxley run. But we've been talking about potentially partnering with other larger shows. Haven't done anything along those lines yet. The last few years have been just about kind of trying to optimize our own business, but it might make sense if we could find a show that partners well with ours to do something like that.
So this isn't like you owning and launching a new show. It's an already like thinking about already existing shows and partnering on what, like cross promotion or running their business side or what?
Yeah, I think cross promotion, all that. We've kind of figured out some good ways to run partnerships with brands. We figured, some shows have really great distribution, but they're having trouble monetizing. And I think we've totally figured it out, but we have some experience doing that. There's other shows out there that we know of that have started either with, bigger brands or institutions and have gotten independent and are kind of went through some of the same struggles that we did maybe 2 years ago. So we feel like we could be helpful to them. So yeah, it's really just idea stage right now, but could be interesting down the road.
Okay, Eli, those are all the questions I have for you. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, just head over to designbetter.com or designbetterpodcast.com, and that's where all the things live.
All right. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.